Welcome to Habit Hackers Rebel Radio episode 10. In this episode, I want to sit down with three people of different perspectives on learning, on especially book learning. Now, I as somebody who just rushes through the books, anything that I think might be valuable, I read and absorb and try and get something from. We also had Matt. So Matt's a teacher, he's a public speaker, and really absorbs and gets deep into the book, along with Ben, who's an entrepreneur. Ben is meticulous in the way he understands books. And then we have Anthony as well. So Anthony actually owns a website that sells summaries, so shorten the amount of information that you get and summarize just the key points. So I wanted to hear from these guys, what were their favorite books, what were the ones that had the most impact, and where do we land on the right way to learn.
Books that you guys would recommend. What from your piece here? Why don't I start, guys? So I mentioned James Allen. As a Man Thinketh. It's a tiny, thin little book, about 100 years old, but a great book to find the connection in the brain and how your life ends up. Another one is Tipping Point. You guys read this?
Yes.
Man, Tipping Point's awesome for how little things make a big difference. If you care about habits, care about how the future will turn out based on it, I think this is a great one. What it talks about is if you want overnight success, if you want that big moment where things really take off, it's actually got nothing to do with that moment. It's just that everything led up to that, and it happened because the stars aligned. So it's
I believe in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, look at all those YouTubers. Like, everyone thinks they're like overnight successes, but man, you just must look like at people who have like 100,000 subscribers. They started like 7-8 years ago, like with uploading videos every day, and then eventually that's an example, of course, but yeah, I really believe in that. It's your daily actions that matter.
Well, this Tipping Point gives some really good examples over businesses and people that had that moment, and they say what had to align for that to work in the way it did. Biographies, or autobiographies of this beast, Total Recall.
Yeah. What is good about that book? I've heard a lot about it.
He's crazy, man. It's not. It's just it makes your life look really easy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's stories of this where he's 13 or 12 in Austria picking up glass, and that his job was to pick up glass for a small amount of money. And when that's your beginning, everything else seems pretty possible, and that you're willing to do anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read that book as well, Craig. It's really good. I recommend it on audio again because it's far too big to sit down and read that kind of book. And Arnold Schwarzenegger talks a small part in it, and it's good to hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Wasn't it funny to hear someone else reading his words though? Because all you can do is picture his voice.
Yeah, talking like Terminator.
And then the other one, this is a great Business for Punks, Brewdog. I don't know if this is an international book or not really, but James Watts, one of the guys that started Brewdog beer company, that really talks about that and Rework. That's backwards, but Rework. Those two books are just about ignoring a lot of the status quo and a lot of the stuff you hear about and what you think you should do, and just do what makes sense for you. Those two books gave me a lot of confidence in that area.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and then actually the one more I was going to show. This is really, really cool. The J. Peterman catalogs from I'll have to show you these and share these, but these are pretty cool. I got these on eBay for about £12.
Mm-hmm.
These are clothing catalogs from the 80s and 90s. So this one's from 1993. If you want to learn more about copy, like I say, I'm not a great reader, not a great writer. Actually, saying that's probably a bad thing. I should stop saying that. But if you want to learn how to write better, these are a great example, because you know what a clothing catalog looks like. But these guys give these massive stories about a pair of trousers, and they give there's a hat, a lady's hat, and they don't just say lady's hat. They give a huge story about what it's about. No one wrote like this before, and no one writes like this anymore.
My 3 books, and these were the ones that had the biggest impact on my life personally. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I think this is the best book if you're an introvert and you don't have the characteristics of someone who talks publicly or like doesn't dare to speak up for himself. Practically, if you don't get along with other people, like, this is a must read. Then the second one is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Everyone knows this book probably, but this just makes sense, like how successful people structure their habits and their life. It's really fundamental. And then I had The Power of Habits, which I really liked. So these 3 books I would recommend to everyone.
Matt, what would yours be?
Cool. Well, I've got these 2 right here, actually. I would put these together. Start with Why and Find Your Why. Ben, you just recently read that one, right? The Start with Why?
Reading, yeah. Currently listening.
Reading right now. Yeah. So I feel like these were very impactful in my life because it really helped me to refine what my actual goal is in creating my blog and website. And still my blog and website is not complete, but I at least know what my direction is. And that's what I felt like these books gave me. And also, it talks a lot about leadership and how good leaders create a following and make the following long lasting, along with, the people that work for the leaders as well as the customer. Then,
I haven't read Find Your Why yet. Is it because I find that Start Your Why was great, but trying to figure it out, I don't know if I'm there yet. So is Find Your Why a helpful tool?
I mean, for me personally, it helped me. So maybe if it helped me, it could possibly help you. There's some exercises in there. I actually didn't follow through with all the exercises where it says find a partner and things like that. Maybe if I had actually found the partner, it would help me out more. But I seriously thought about what the exercises were, and yeah, I mean, it helped me to. I decided to pick this one up. It's very similar to Tipping Point, but I feel like Contagious focuses more on like a marketing aspect. It tells you how you get your content or your products to go viral. And it tells you in the 6 steps. So actually, I feel like it's very clear and actionable. Then we've got TED Talks. I think I mentioned that one earlier. One of my actual services on my website is public speaking. So I feel like this book is personally very beneficial to me because it gives you step by step on how you're supposed to prepare a TED-like talk. Also, it tells you a lot about storytelling, which I feel like is important, whether you're writing a blog or you're doing a pitch or doing a speech. Storytelling really helps you to get your message across in a very interesting way. So I felt like that book was very beneficial.
Okay. Is there one thing you can share from it?
One thing I can share from it, whether you're writing or speaking, build the idea, build whatever idea you have in the minds of your audience, step by step.
I couldn't ever really say a number one book. I've got so many books that I think are up there, but if there was one author like in all his books, it would definitely be Will Durant, who I always talk about. This is The Story of Civilization by Will Durant, and it basically gives you a short biography of all the, well, in his eyes, the greatest thinkers that have ever walked the planet Earth. That got me into the rest of Will Durant's books where he studied. I think he studied basically his whole life. Him and his wife, Ariel Durant, I think, went on to study for about 50 years the history of civilization, which is a book series called The Story of Civilization. The Story of Civilization, he would focus a lot on the philosophers of those times, but it was really a book about civilization and history. You could probably go to the book and jump straight to like a philosopher. It just has their names on there. and you could jump right to them and read a really good biography on them. So you could use it like that, just almost like a dictionary if you wanted. But I just went literally right through the book, and you can see the thickness of it. It's some size, but I listened to it on audio again. Like that's the way that I go through them. So that would be my recommendation if I was to recommend a book to anyone. You learn a lot about our history, and you can apply a lot of the lessons learned over history
Awesome.
to our current situation in the future.
Ben, you just made me want to read this book right now.
It's brilliant. Like it changed the way I think about everything
Awesome.
by studying our past. And I've always been into history. The only thing I'd done good at school was actually history, where I got I think it wasn't even an A, it was maybe a B. And I've always found it interesting. So that book really sent me backwards instead of reading all the modern books that we see marketed really well. I just started going straight back to the classics and taking the books that Will Durant recommended to me. So I've been going on like a journey of like learning about our history. And I've noticed the trend that all the big leaders, if you think about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who's the other guy, Ray Dalio, if you listen to what books they recommend, it's always history. And it's because like these are innovators, they're visionaries and futuristic thinkers. Yeah. They read the past to learn like what they're going to do in the future. And I think that's the best thing about Will Durant is he's just a historian. He's a commentator on what he thinks happened in the past based on all the books and experiences he studied about our past, and teaches you. He really tries to extract the lesson in that person's life, if that makes sense, and in that person's what do you call them? In their research. So like Aristotle researched the soul, and he would tell you a wee tiny part about Aristotle's book about the soul. He would tell you a wee bit about his book on politics, but he would really do a great brief summary of that book and tell you the lesson in it, the point that the guy was trying to get across. So that's The Story of Civilization by Will Durant.
What's one practical lesson that you took from that that's changed your habits and behaviour?
There's so many, but I would say like one thing I was actually, when the three of you were going over your favourite books, I was actually slithering whether to swap this one with one of the books. I think it was The Life of Greece, because what happened is I listened to this twice on Audible, and then I've just bought the book because I still, it's again like going back to what I said about a book that makes you think and you don't get it the first time or the second time or even the third time. That's a great book, but you keep being drawn back to wanting to learn more from it. So I don't really think I could summarize this book and do it justice and even tell you one of the best lessons out of it. I would say I comprehended I think I became a better reader, and I learned more lessons out of The Story of Greece, which is volume 2 of The Story of Civilization by Will Durant. And one of the best lessons I learned in that book was it was the golden age of Greece, when all these philosophers were about Aristotle, Plato, which made I think it was the school of Athens, where a lot of philosophers flocked to, and that Athens became a really thriving city, maybe the best time of human civilization, like we think of ancient Egypt. We think of it as like really clever people who came up with inventions way before their time. And Athens was very similar to that in terms of the people, the thinkers. But one thing about that civilization at that period, before the downfall of it, was they were all virtuous people. And it wasn't religious virtue, it was just virtue. So as in like good habits, moral code. So like being good people and being up early, things like that. They were very virtuous people, and they cut out all their vices, like drinking to excess. So that was one of the Greek sayings. I think it was nothing in excess. And I think that was kind of one of the main takeaways I got from this book and The Story of Civilization, is that that city was so thriving at that time and period is because not just one person, but the whole city, every person in that civilization or society was virtuous. That all brought together a brilliant place a utopia, what you would call it, like a great place to live. Yeah. A stoic city, rather than Epicureans that are existing today, people who like the luxuries of life too much and aren't building enough. And that's why I fell into entrepreneurship. And philosophers, and the thinking is very similar to entrepreneurship, I would say, because they're problem solvers. So there's a couple of lessons.
Awesome.
The second book would be Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. If any of you have read that.
Yep.
No, I'm surprised.
Read that? Really? That's a good one.
Yeah.
What was your key takeaway from Tony Robbins one?
Transformational vocabulary is, for example, the vocabulary of the successful person. So instead of I can't, you can say I might not be able to do that, but I will try. So it's just slightly changing your words, like what Craig was mentioning earlier. You might need to work on some transformational vocabulary rather than saying I'm not good at reading, or I can't read, or I can't sit down and read a book for an hour. You could possibly say something like I've never got into the habit of reading, and I'm not sure when I'll start. Something like that. So it's not, you don't define yourself
Yeah, sure.
on something. So that's one way to do it. One thing I use all the time, which is pretty funny, and everyone laughs about it, is like, instead of saying that's so annoying, which I used to say all the time, and I didn't realize it, I now say that's unenchanting. And that was a word I got out of Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. So next time you're going to say that's so annoying, or I dislike that, try that. Say that's so unenchanting. It actually keeps your mood. It keeps you in a good mood, rather than making you more annoyed about the thing. It's just changing your words slightly. So
the way you talk to yourself. Yeah.
The way you talk to yourself, but not just that, the way that you express yourself changes how
the choices of words, right?
It's not just like, because you can be fake if you overuse it. But that's the idea of it. It's almost replace the word, don't reverse the word, but replace the word and use a slightly more positive word than it is, because it's never as bad as we kind of express it is. Yeah. And it's not just about the expression, how it makes that person feel. It's about how it makes you feel when you say annoying or hate or. Yeah.
I have a friend that cut out the word "but" because he said it's a terrible word because it negates everything that you say before it.
Yeah.
He's I'm going to be there on time, but I might be late.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be on there on time.
Exactly.
So it's really weird. Like, it takes some discipline to do initially, but he just doesn't. If he feels himself needing to say "but," he clarifies his speech and just doesn't say it. So he's either gonna be on time or he's not.
Yeah, it's like so. The top 3, I think it is can't. Change that to can. Try it today for the rest of your day. If you're about to say
change it to will.
Will, that as well. Yeah. So I can, I will. I'm going to, things like that. They are the positive ways of using it, rather than I can't, I won't.
I'm not able.
Unable, things like that. Yeah.
I always tell my students to use can.
Yeah.
For sure. Sometimes they say can't, and I'm like, hey, have the positive attitude, because if you say you can't, then you're going to think that you can't, right?
Exactly.
If you say you can, then you can start to believe it, and you can at least try.
Yeah. Exactly.
Got it.
That's the biggest takeaway. Unenchanting is the biggest takeaway I got.
Have you ever seen the 5 levels of self-talk? The lowest level is I can't. So say it's smoking. You want to give up smoking. So the bottom level is I can't give up smoking. So that's the lowest level. Then above that, it's I can give it up smoking. So you're saying it's at least possible. And then the level above that is I will give up smoking. And then level 2, the second to highest level is I've given up smoking. And then the highest level would be in the present. So you say, I'm not a smoker.
Yeah.
Or sorry, even above that, you would say, I'm healthy and I look after myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen something similar. Like I think it was Ty Lopez shared it. There was a graph of almost the words of the successful and the words of the failures or something. And it was like almost what you said. So there was, I can, I will, I've done. And then there's, I can't, I won't, I did not, or something. So yeah, the third book is this one here, How to Read a Book.
Oh yeah.
And I've read that rather than listen to it on Audible, because it just wouldn't make sense. It's a book on like practical tips on how to actually read your book. And you see, I've kind of destroyed it with the bookmarks, and I've actually been taking the advice to What I've done here is I've created my own table of contents, which was a big takeaway I got from this book. So that's How to Read a Book by Mortimer J. Adler. It's a book that teaches you how to read a book properly. To read that book before you go on to read any other paperback book, like a physical book, again, because there's so many mistakes that I've made. Like I said, I didn't comprehend or take in everything in the story of the story of philosophy, but I started to have that different level of thinking when reading the next book of Will Durant's. I really want to learn that. It's something that I'm really interested in. How to read a book better and how to extract as much from that book and use the books as much as possible.
Matt, you were saying you just enjoy the process. You like almost the escapism and going deep with a book. I don't. That's not my purpose when reading. For me, it's if I can read the least amount possible to get the gems. So it's the opposite. It's how little can I get away with before I've learned what I need to. It's maybe the lazy or maybe the shortcut. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's any right or wrong, because like I said, the audiobooks are good for my subconscious way of learning, and I feel myself using them the more I consume. But I feel I more embed them when I get the paperback and do this sort of underlining and highlighting and everything.
Well, it's funny. I don't actually like, you get these book summaries, you get audible versions. I'm sure you get paper ones. I really don't like those.
No.
I think it's too far.
Right. Okay.
I go, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not deep enough. So I kind of go,
okay.
I think the audiobook is valuable to go a little bit deep and really understand it. And a summary, just being told it isn't enough, which is what a summary does. And that's my biggest thing with Tai Lopez, is he has read something like a book a day forever because he reads book summaries. And it shows, I think it shows in Tai Lopez that he doesn't really understand it. He can recite it and he can give examples and he can curate it. I don't feel like that guy really knows what he's saying. Yeah,
he's a great curator, for sure. He's really good at that, because there's things that, like you're saying, there's books that I've read that he's also read. So he talked about the Will Durant's book volumes, and I basically, from watching enough of his videos, he's only really dipped into them, and I've really went from start to finish of them and rewound the audiobook a bunch of times to try and actually learn the parts. So I have noticed that myself, that I don't think he really does read a book from start to finish, which is fine. He talks in the 67 steps. He actually talks about not going through a whole book, and this How to Read a Book tells you the same, that when you're reading non-fiction, and as I said on the Story of Civilization, you could jump straight to the philosopher you wanted to read the biography on, and that's the point of non-fiction. It's laying out what you're going to learn in this table of contents. So if you have a goal of what you want to learn, you don't need to read a full book.
Yeah,
like what you do.
I don't get. I mean, I don't know. Like, Craig, you said that you don't like to read for the sake of reading, right? So, and then you said eventually that you also don't like summaries. So I don't really get it though.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's somewhere in between, because I think there's kind of hearing something and then there's understanding it, and I think like a table of contents can lay out what the topic is, how, and you can read, like, let me pick a random book, is if you think of Rework, say, so the first chapter in this is Ignore the Rest of the World. That, sure, like, and that's when you just make that a summary like that, I think that's fine, like, ignore the rest of the world, okay, but that's not enough for that to stick in my mind. So I'll go as far as I have to before I really get what they're saying. You know what I mean? And that often isn't the entire book. Like, Start with Why. You guys mentioned that. I think that's a great book, but that's one concept. You should start with your why. I don't think a summary would do that. But I read that book as long as I had to, until I really got what he's saying, and I started to feel like he was repeating himself, and he's repeating himself for the people that don't get it just yet.
Yeah, I get that. It's like you don't, with a summary. I think your point is, Craig. This is just an assumption, but you don't want someone to decide for you what the summary of that book is. You want to find out the summary for yourself.
Yeah, that's probably it. I want to shortcut the book for myself. I want to create the summary. I don't want to be told. It's not enough to just tell me this is what people learn from the book, because it's not like you guys took storytelling from The Power of Habits. I'm going, I don't know what story is in that book. So for you to write a book summary, probably put storytelling is important. I wouldn't put that in it. I would say cue reward. That would be my takeaway from that book. So as soon as a book starts to repeat itself and I get bored of it, it's probably because I get it. It's time to move on.
Do you not feel like you're missing out when you get to that? Like if you get to 2/3 through a book and you just don't read the last part, does anyone else get the same feeling of missing out what you could miss in that part? That last third.
I definitely feel like that, Ben. You said it exactly right how I feel. I personally like to read a book from cover to cover. Well, depending on what the book is. But yeah, I feel like I might miss out on something if I don't finish the book.
I feel like I look like Ben. What you said makes sense. It's annoying when you don't get those last 50 pages. Like especially if you set yourself the goal of finishing the book. So I love to read from cover to cover, but I don't know. I also think it all depends on your timing and the workload you're currently having. I think when you're busy and you're not into reading a full book, then, and I literally do this. Like for example, I was literally looking up Deep Work by Cal Newport. Because I felt like I was a bit distracted. So I just went to YouTube and I typed in Deep Work animated video summary and I looked it up and it gave me everything I needed, like the principles he explained. So in that way, I didn't have to go to, I don't know, buy his book or listen to it on Audible and search for those topics. I think those, in that way, those summaries can be very valuable. But I'm biased, of course.
No, I think you made a good point because it's more personal preference. And probably that idea that me and Matt both agree on, that we don't like to miss the last 50 pages, is probably more an emotional thing rather than really doesn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Anthony, I kind of disagree with you though about that. I mean, I could do the same thing. I could go onto YouTube and search for a particular topic and get the takeaways from the book. But I feel like there's value in the written word. The author put together the book in a certain way, telling certain stories to help you understand that topic. I feel like, I'm big on stories.
No, Matt, 100%.
I feel like the stories definitely help me understand.
100%. But some people don't have time to read those stories and they value other activities rather than those stories. So that's why they just want those key takeaways. So I get your point 100%, but a lot of people don't.
But also, I remember Ben posted this thing on this business a while ago about I'd rather read 3 fantastic books than 30 shitty ones or something like that. So take the time that you need to read the fantastic book. I don't know, that's my point. I feel like I don't care if I read 20 fantastic books rather than 50 crappy books in a year, something like that.
It's funny. I would rather. I remember when Ben posted that, and you're not wrong, Ben. But I would rather read the 30 crappy ones. What would happen with me is I would get to 12 of them, 12 in, and go and already have disagreed with most of it, and by doing that, I will have figured out what I need to do. So I will have read a book that I think is way off the mark, but it will have told me what I think is on the mark looks like.
Yeah,
so
awesome point.
It's like if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always gotten. It's a great one. If you just keep going and keep, it's like the new Vaynerchuk. This is a good one. The new Vaynerchuk book. I'm probably not going to buy it because I'm pretty sure I could write it. I think I know what he's going to say.
Yep.
So I'm not going to get anything from that book.
No. Yeah.
It's got every one of his 2,000 million videos.
Yeah,
I'm probably not going to buy it either because I actually tried to avoid listening to Gary Vaynerchuk stuff recently. I love him. I love his stuff. But it's
repetitive.
It can be repeatable stuff.
And it's also these guys are smart. They have a following. Like they can create whatever the fuck they want. Like people are going to buy it anyway. So, I'm still sure he looks over what's being told in the book, like the content and stuff like that. But people just buy it because, like people are desperate. People don't know what to do. And I really believe that that's the power of the following and the social proof they have. So
Do you think it becomes more about the author then? So once an author has
Yeah.
had a couple of successful books, they can bring it.
I've noticed that for Ryan Holiday, for example. So I got his first book in my hands, which was about PR. I think it was called Confessions of someone help me. I forgot the title though, but
What, one of Ryan Holiday's books?
yeah, it's one of his first ones. It was about marketing though. Yeah, I forgot the title. So anyway, I got this in my hands at my school, and I was like, oh, who is this author? I don't really care. And then he wrote 2 or 3 bestsellers like Ego is the Enemy. He wrote The Obstacle is the Way.
Yeah.
Then I bought his book Perennial Seller with full enthusiasm. So simply by those guys pushing out work after work and gaining a following, I was more tempted to buy his book. So I think it definitely plays a role. The credibility of the author, I would say.
Seems like nowadays it's less about any one book. Just like for example, there's a guy, Brendan Burchard, I think his name is, how you say it, and he's been around for a while. I've seen him a few times. I've never connected with him, and I just think this is a really clean, put together guy who is very accurate in the way he speaks. I just don't connect with him. He's about.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to buy his books. I know he's got them, but then he brought out High Performance Habits, and it was the word habits that caught my ear. And I read that book, and I thought, this is great. This is really good. This is well researched, new, intelligent, specific, usable, and all of a sudden his old stuff becomes a lot more palatable.
Yeah,
which is crazy because it's the same stuff. I just see it differently now because I'm on board with him. So
he did some great marketing as well. I saw him a couple of times on Facebook. Yeah.
It's like the free book, but they kill you with the shipping cost.
Well, I mean, it's just getting attention first, isn't it? It's these guys now. Like I got there's a good book I read, or rather a book I bought called Biohacking Secrets by Anthony DiClemente, and I bought the book free plus shipping. I haven't read it, but I'm totally about what this guy's about because I've now bought his online course and I've done all the things that I know they're doing to me. I've fallen into every trap he's laid out. I've fallen into, and I know exactly what he's doing, and I don't really care.
Greg, have you read Millionaire Success Habits by Dean Graziosi?
I keep
This guy,
free plus shipping. I'm gonna end up getting it.
his marketing is so brilliant. Like he puts his book on fire on Instagram, and he's like, "This book is on fire." Have you seen it? I don't know if you've seen it.
I have seen it, and
You can't miss it. And that's why I talk about like the bestseller list. They get to the bestseller list by giving lots of books away for free and doing really, really good marketing. Yeah. And that's why I'm so careful with what I pick up now, because you just pick up the best marketed book after the best marketed book, rather than the best book after the best book.
What's one book that you would recommend that you're confident nobody else in this call has heard of?
I once read a book. I was into I was 22. I was into dating, and I read the book Sperm Wars by Robin Baker. And it talked about, it's funny, it talked about actually how, I'm not going to go into detail. You have to read it first, but it's funny. You have to Google it. Sperm Wars by Robin Baker.
I don't know if I want to Google Sperm Wars.
Yeah.
I don't want that in my search history.
You'll get dumped.
Matt,
it's interesting though. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It took me a little while to think, but you probably don't know this one, written by an Indonesian author. Been published internationally or what? Yeah, it's called Turn Right by Inez Natalia. And she actually sent me this book to review. I'm certainly reading it, but it's basically about finding your purpose. It's kind of like Start With. So it's a bit of review for me, but there's a cool takeaways, and I think it's actually very good. It's written for people that haven't found their purpose yet. So,
nice.
Yeah. Turn Right by Inez Natalia.
Nice. One that if you guys haven't heard of, I think it's semi-famous, I don't know, is The Rise of Superman.
I feel like I've heard of it or seen the book cover, but I've not heard a lot about it anyway.
I think this is probably on the edge of what people people listening to this will have some people listening to this will have heard it maybe, but it's about flow. It's really about flow state and or getting in the zone is another way of saying it. But Decoding the Science of Ultimate Human Performance is its subtitle. It's really about the value of getting into that zone, where you're doing something and time falls away, like this. Like we've been going for longer than we said we would because it's enjoyable and we've kind of forgotten about all the responsibilities we have right now. That's flow state. That's a good thing, and that's something to chase. And this is one highlighting it in a bunch of different ways, and then also some strategy about how to get there. And they talk about Olympians, is how often Olympians, when they look back on their performance, they wonder how they did it, because almost like a second person appears, because they just get in such a flow state and something takes over. In the same way that musicians talk about, I didn't really write that song, the song kind of came to me and I just wrote it down. That's flow state, is a second person seems to appear in your own head.
Awesome, thanks for sharing.